freedom is never more than one generation away from extinction. We didn't pass it on to our children in the bloodstream. The only way they can inherit the freedom we have known is if we fight for it, protect it, defend it, and then hand it to them with the well-taught lessons of how they in their lifetime must do the same. And if you and I don't do this, then you and I may well spend our sunset years telling our children and our children's children what it once was like in America when men were free.
Hey everybody, welcome to episode number 262 of Gun Freedom Radio, where we engage, we educate, and we inform. We are brought to you by azfirearms.com, your nationwide hometown gun shop. I am one of your hosts, Cheryl Todd.
And I'm the other guy, Dan Todd. Our theme today is, what does it all mean? And our guest today is Eric Watson. Eric is the owner of Watson's Hat Shop, which is a slice of American history and ingenuity. And at one point, Eric was the youngest master hat maker in the country. Mm-hmm. Eric is a Christian and has a love for our nation and the constitutional protections, including our Second Amendment that we inherited from our founding fathers. Eric holds a degree in international diplomacy and peace studies and has been keeping track of news articles leading to the 2020 election that seem to be unrelated, yet Eric says we can all see a common thread running through them.
Welcome to the show. Welcome back to the show, Eric.
Hi, how are you guys doing?
Great. And we are really excited to kind of dig into this series of articles really that you have compiled on a PowerPoint, and you've been updating me because we put that link on your guest page at gunfreedomradio.com. Click the guest tab and search for Eric Watson, and we're keeping it up to date. And you know, because there's a lot of stuff that, you know, sounds a little crazy, sounds a little tinfoil hat, you
and
know,
what does it all mean?
Right. And so when you see where the actual source of the information, where it's been sourced from, it's like, oh, that's a pretty legit site. That's a pretty legit article. And so, you know, the things that used to sound, I said after 2020, I don't think anything could actually sound too crazy to be true anymore. But so Eric, you have been monitoring the news articles on the coin shortage, right? Mm-hmm. The expected rolling blackouts through the rest of our late summer, early fall, on the United Nations, on COVID-19, and a big G20 meeting in our nation's capital. And as we sit here in the studio on Monday, September 28th, in the infamous year of 2020, what does it all mean? What is the common threads that you're finding?
The most common thread that you'll see is that the leftist majority of the Democratic Party has aligned with the United Nations 17 SDG program, and also major corporations have. And we'll get into it a little bit here. I'm actually gonna tell you who's involved in one of our largest power grid companies. And I don't mean just electricity, but also gas. And that was the most recent that I found. And then how that interlinks, and how APS APS here in Arizona is actually going to be increasing our rate substantially over this year and into next year, and continuously if they have their way with the new Green Deal.
The new Green Deal. There we go. That's something everybody's heard of, right? That right. New Green Deal that's supposed to save the planet while it's kind of killing businesses and maybe killing us along the way.
Oh yeah. There's just a lot of political elitists that are involved in that. One of the largest things that nobody has really talked about, as far as relating to doctors during this COVID period is there's actually a group called Physicians for Social Responsibility. And you can look up in my PowerPoint, but there's chapters in many universities across the country. And when you actually dive into the group, it's all about the new Green Deal, and it's UN related, and it's incredible. So that's just one piece of the pie. So
Well, and I'm trying to figure out how to pull up your PowerPoint as we speak. So don't mind me, just keep talking through the different things. And so we've got the UN involved in the new Green Deal. We've got pretty much the entire Democratic Party that's bought into this new Green Deal. Maybe not your neighbor who's a Democrat, your pal who's a Democrat, but the Democratic Party is fully bought into this.
A lot of the Democratic elite politicians.
Mm-hmm. And so that's something to keep in mind, because we are, just a few days away from a very consequential election. And so it's kind of important to see, what we've heard so many times: elections have consequences. Well, what might be the consequences as we're relating to these kinds of things? I mean, where do you want to start? Do you want to start with, these rolling blackouts? Like, why all of a sudden? I mean, every summer we kind of have some, but we've got huge wildfires everywhere.
California has a terrible rolling blackout thing. Remember, we're in San Diego, and they said between the hours of 5 and like 7 o'clock that we're going to lose power to the resort.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, and they said that's a normal thing. Normal thing.
Yeah.
So where do you want to start?
That is a normal thing. I have been hearing that, but what is abnormal about it is it's happening so much more frequently. Also, I came across an article that I'm pulling up here. It related to actually Arizona, and Arizona utilities are assuring resource adequacy, but details will take time. This was a report on September 18th, 2020. Investors are questioning the reliability of APS power supply during hot months and selling our energy to other states, primarily California. Concerns wondering if APS will be able to power adequate amounts of energy in the future to all customers without rolling blackouts.
Mm-hmm.
That's a concern.
Yeah, for sure.
Something else that happened with SRP. This was recent. This was August 2020. SRP is asking customers to reduce power usage as fires take transmission lines out of service. The salt wildfire burning in Tonto National Forest, which was, not that long ago, just about a month or so ago, has taken out large eastern Arizona transmission lines to go out of service. The lines bring energy to many valley-based SRP customers. The balance of the SRP system is currently operating normally. However, the loss of this transmission line could result in major outages.
So what does it mean? Like, why would this be happening if it weren't just kind of like, well, it's hot outside and there's a lot more usage?
Right.
I mean, because you can see that people could easily try to just brush it off that way, right?
Well, I'll show you when it all started. So recently we had RBG that passed away from cancer. During that period, I discovered that they were saying something about there was a written or will testament that was left to the granddaughter. The granddaughter of the Supreme Court Justice Ginsburg is Clara Spira. Well, I started to kind of research that a little bit because I'm like, well, that's funny that they were saying that the will and testament was not to fulfill RBG's Supreme Court justice position until after 2020. That was the will and testament of RBG. And that was given to the granddaughter. So I started looking up the granddaughter. The granddaughter belongs to Equal Justice Works. Equal Justice Works is actually headed by George Soros.
Interesting.
Yeah. So then I was like, okay. So I started looking into that, found out that exactly the same type of people that it's, you know, that they were asking for back in 2017 and even now to join have everything to do with political type positions that relate to election, equal justice. I mean, you know, list goes on and on. And then I started to think to myself, well, who else coordinates with George Soros? Who's friends with him?
Mm-hmm.
And so actually came across where Tom Steyer, presidential nominee, is actually works along with Soros on scholarship programs. And I was like, that's interesting. So then I started to find out that Tom Steyer was the one behind who changed the policy, Prop 127, when Arizonians, we voted to not increase rates.
Mm-hmm.
And so that kind of went away because Tom Steyer, along with New Green Deal money, somehow swayed APS to go ahead and move forward with a new Green Deal, which would be zero carbon emissions on power by the year 20. I believe it's 2035 or 2050. I have to look again. But anyway, it's going to increase our rates substantially through that period.
Yeah,
So,
after we voted that we didn't want that. That's so special
Right.
when they do that kind of thing, because
they didn't
it's,
listen to
they
the
know
people at all.
better. Yeah, that stuff drives me nuts, and that really comes back down to, you know, sometimes it's regulations and policies that
Right.
act like laws that really aren't laws, that force us as citizens to behave and to
Sure.
comply and that sort of thing. But we can't do a lot about that except
Right.
elect people who take their constitutional oaths seriously,
Right.
so that it's less likely that they are going to enact these kinds of policies and that
Right.
sort of thing.
So
So
Governor Ducey should be saying something right now about that, and he's not.
peep, mom, nothing. And so looking at some of your most recent entries into the PowerPoint, we were just recently told in the Wall Street Journal, prep
Yep.
your tech for
That's
power
correct.
outages and other emergencies. So I don't know, maybe they say that every summer, at the end of every
Right.
summer. I'm not sure.
The
But
Scottsdale City Council came out with a newsletter for September, or the city of Scottsdale did, and they emailed out in regards to National Preparedness Month. I've never even heard of that month. I didn't even know that existed.
I didn't either. I didn't know if it was something new this year, or if just because you and I have been talking so much and I've got a generator this year for the first time in my life, if I just was prone to see it when it came through my email. But
Yeah.
I was like, and they even broke it down by, you know, the first week of September, you should be buying and preparing these kinds of things. The second
Right.
week.
We're saying that only 1 month out of the year we should prepare ourselves.
Hey,
Yeah.
most of us never do. So if
Yeah.
we do it one of the 12 months, that's 100%.
Why don't we just call it National Preparation Year for
Oh.
2020?
Yeah, pretty
And,
much.
1 month.
But
Okay.
I thought that was really interesting. They were telling us in this newsletter, because of National Preparedness Month, which once again, many of us never even heard of, make sure that we have food and water and cash on hand, and we have a bag ready to go. I'm like, this is getting interesting. So
for sure, because we just don't know. I mean, we live here in
Yeah.
Arizona, so we probably aren't going to have a flood, but it has happened.
That's right.
We live in areas where we're probably not going to be affected by, some kind of a huge fire, but that's not a
But we
guarantee.
have a big fire right now, over 9,200 acres on fire.
Just started yesterday, I think, right?
2 days ago.
And that's in which area is this one? Because we start losing track of.
It's right up over near Rio Verde, and it's east of Rio Verde, kind of near Fountain Hills a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Not too far. It started on the very east side of Cave Creek,
Yeah.
Tonto
So we
Hills,
don't
where
know.
they had actually evacuated them.
Yeah, and we don't know when that could happen. So if you're being forced to leave your house because you're being evacuated for some reason, could be this civil unrest or this political unrest. If you haven't thought your way through at least having some things in a bag, because you don't know how long you're going to be away from your home, some people never get to come home because their homes burn to the ground, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here in Georgia, I'm seeing this article that you have from fairly recently, September 7th of 2020. Power plant had 4 explosions in Georgia, and it shakes homes violently. There was another one, Louisiana, where was that? Where it was a chemical plant on fire, and the noxious fumes were causing people to, first of all, be locked in their houses without electricity. Thank you very much. In the middle of summer in Louisiana, that had to have been horrible because they didn't want the fumes getting in the house. But then, maybe they have to leave their homes for a while until they figure out, how dangerous these fumes are. We're not crazy to think about.
Back to that factory you just said, the chemical plant.
Mm-hmm.
Do you know what chemical plant that was?
I do, but you tell us.
That's one of the largest chemical plants that supplies chlorine tablets for the country, for pools, water treatment, all that.
Yeah. So if you've got a pool, I mean, that sounds like a minor inconvenience, but one thing affects many things. And, that right there, another thing that looking at these slides you have about the power outages here in Phoenix, because we're in Arizona, of course, you're in Cave Creek, we're over here in Litchfield Park, but Phoenix, somebody was lighting our wooden power poles on fire, arson of power poles.
Yep.
When did this happen?
Just like last week.
Really?
Yeah. And so it's like, what is that about? Is somebody just randomly angry at the world and decides they're going to find some charcoal lighter fluid? I don't think so. I think there's
something
else driving that kind of behavior
Sort of like the pallet of
millions.
bricks. Sort of like the pallet of bricks stored in front of a riot situation.
Yeah, that everybody wants to poo-poo and say, no, there was construction, 10 miles from there or something, they want to poo-poo it instead of going, well, all right, let's just open our minds for a moment and consider what might be at play here, right?
And did you see the major explosion, the gas explosion line in Florida?
Florida, I don't think I caught that one. Is that on your? There's a Bronx transformer fire. There's a South Loop Chicago underground transformer fire on your PowerPoint. Major power outage in New York City. We still don't even know what happened there. And
we don't know what happened to any of those, actually. All this stuff is unknown. Reports come out, say, oh, it's going to be a lengthy investigation. My guess is the investigation will go on until after the election. So,
yeah. And that's the thing is they set it up for lengthy, and we are like squirrels. We're like, 5 seconds from now, we're like, oh, there's something shiny. We forget all about it. And who knows if they ever find out if it's something nefarious.
So September 24th, 2020, gas line eruption collapsed an overpass, not just an overpass, but a turnpike, and it shut down the whole Florida Turnpike traffic.
Oh, wow. That's just
You
crazy.
could see there's video of the explosion. Witnesses were there. I mean, it was substantial.
And we don't know, is this coordinated in some way? Is it nefarious in some way? You
I am
know,
starting to think so, because there's way too many things happening that are abnormal.
and so if we are
To
inconvenienced
the
and somebody can tell us that, well, the California is burning to the ground because of global warming, and we're having power outages because we're relying too much on man-made power, whatever. Like, is it a way for us to reach and go, okay, all right, green power, bring it, whatever it take? Like, could that possibly be
you're
the thing?
exactly right. That's exactly the idea that they're trying to show. So if they can make it look that way, it forces their agenda to move forward a little bit more.
Well, and that's one of the things that, we're not on your PowerPoint and our side conversations off air. We haven't really been talking about, the Obamacare and the national health care and insurance horror show that's out there. But that is one thing that has concerned me so much, is that people are going to finally throw their hands up and say, I really can't afford this horrible increase that my insurance has taken since Obamacare kicked in to, somehow make it Affordable Care Act. No, the absolutely unaffordable Care Act is what they should have called it. And so they're going to throw their hands up and say, okay, fine, let's just have socialized medicine. Let's have the single payer, which even that just gets my goat. There is no such thing as a single payer, because the government has zero money that they don't fleece from us through taxes. So this zero payer is actually multitudes of payers called you and your neighbor and their neighbor. But it makes me afraid that, similar to what we're saying with, maybe this is going to make people feel like, oh, this is an attractive option, this new Green Deal. I'm afraid that it's going to be that way with the healthcare, that it's going to look like an attractive option just because it's hitting us, in our pocketbook and in the privacy of our homes and our families.
Yeah. And that's why President Trump just passed that executive order a few days ago, so that he tried to do it through Congress the right way, but the Democrats would not help.
Right. With the pre-existing
that over his head, like, oh, if you have pre-existing conditions, they were trying to make it look like President Trump didn't care, but when in fact he was trying to do it through Congress. So now recently he just passed an executive order so that people do have pre-existing conditions can get the health care that they need.
So a couple times in here in your PowerPoint, we see the name Soros. Has he just become like, the boogeyman that as soon as we invoke his name, that suddenly we know that there's evil afoot? Or is there really anti-American policies and movement, anti-freedom things going on whenever you see his name?
Pretty much. He's become a billionaire on crumbling economies. That's how he's become so rich. And the last one that he devastated was Venezuela. So why would in 2018, before APS and some of these other power companies, with the help of Tom Steyer, we didn't have the new Green Deal on the table for APS during that time, for instance. So some point between 2019 and 2020, George Soros's taxes actually show that in 2018 he had 0 shares in PG&E, and now he's got like 104 million shares.
So maybe he just likes to make money in the stock market, right? Like, do we automatically have to say that there's something, less than good going on?
Well, definitely you should, because U.S. Attorney General Barr came out and said the main person that funds Antifa, the anti-fascist movement, is George Soros.
So if you just want to start there, I guess you
Yeah.
could say, does he really have our best interest in mind if our interests are constitutionally based freedoms? And I'm thinking maybe not. Now let's go back to this United Nations. So I was just reading, I'm reading a book that was written about 20 years ago, and it's just on, presidents, different presidents, and the challenges that they had, and that they had to kind of step up and show the courage of their character, and that kind of thing. And one of the things that was discussed is that, gosh, now I'm going to forget which president it was. Was it Nick? No, it wasn't Nixon. I'll have to look. I'll fill that in, or I'll put it in the comments. That he wanted the League of Nations. And so the League of Nations, he had good intentions for the League of Nations, but it just didn't have any teeth. It went away. Was it Wilson? I forget. Anyway, but later on, the UN came into being, and the UN has teeth. And so it sounds like a good thing, right? United Nations.
They started in 1950, didn't they?
How can that be a bad thing? Again, I'll have to
I
look
think
that
it's
up.
1950. I'll look it up.
But now we're seeing that there is meddling, right? That's kind of a word we could use, even at our local governments. Like
Yep.
in Scottsdale, Arizona, somehow the United Nations has tentacles that go even to that level. Talk to us a little bit about, why would that be? And if it is, why is it bad?
Well, the United Nations has become extremely corrupt, and they were kind of corrupt to begin with, but the whole idea was to try to bring countries together. But we have too much political elite power that's been kind of drawn into the United Nations. Just to give you an example, is if we look at the World Health Organization, for instance, one of the two major foundations that support the World Health Organization is the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation and the Rockefeller Foundation. Well, you're like, that's weird. Well, Melinda was actually a Rockefeller.
Melinda Gates was a Rockefeller.
Gates.
It's funny. I keep seeing these, I don't know if they're memes or what they are, but it's sort of like, there's like 5 major families that pretty much run the entire world. And I don't know if that's true or not, but when you hear something like that, you're like,
yeah.
Oh, wait a minute. Okay, well, there it is again,
Yeah.
that Melinda Gates comes from the Rockefeller.
Well, you look at COVID-19, and for over 100 years, I think it was in the 1890s, Big Pharma was created by the Rockefellers.
And again, it could have come from maybe a good intention, but the road to hell is paved on good intentions. And I did just look it up, and Woodrow Wilson was the president that wanted the League of Nations. And his idea was that, maybe he could have avoided a World War II and saved, hundreds of thousands of lives. But who knows? Because would the Nazis have come up anyway?
Well, I have a different thing.
Anyway?
The name United Nations, coined by the United States President Franklin D. Roosevelt, was first used in the Declaration of the United Nations, January 1942, during the Second World War, when representatives of 26 nations pledged their governments to continue fighting together.
Right. So this was League of Nations, and it dissolved, and then this is the United Nations.
So, but 1948, I think, is when 46 is when it really.
Gotcha.
But
So maybe they started because Woodrow Wilson, he had like a good idea, or he felt like it was a good idea. But then you get politics, you get bureaucracies, you get nations that okay, just because they're sitting there in the United Nations, are they really united? Do they really have each other's best interest? I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm going to say no.
Well, if we actually take a look, if you go back into the slide and then you look at one of the 12 corporations as part of the Federal Reserve Board or the Federal Reserve, the Rockefellers is one of those too.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So
And
they kind of pop up quite a bit when you start looking at what's going on and what ties they have.
and
And
so
you
big.
say, oh, well, they have a lot of money, so they're highly involved. Okay, well, yeah, that's probably true. So
Right.
sometimes there's just too many coincidences that you have to start looking at it, and you have to just kind of look at it in different perspective. They're not gonna, whatever they do, they're gonna make it look like it was an accident.
Yeah. With good intentions, for sure.
Yeah, and also with good intentions, of course.
But does it go against American sovereignty? And does it actually help the sovereignty of the individual? I don't think so, because when you are trying to get all of these huge bureaucratic entities united on something, the individual becomes so tiny that I don't think it really does serve us. It serves the bigger organization.
And then if you look at some of those congressional leaders like Matt Gaetz, Congressman Andy Biggs, and several others, they're trying to disconnect from the United Nations.
Yes.
Trump, at the end of 2019, met with the G20, and he told them that we're not going to be a part of your agenda, your one world agenda. We're just not going to be a part of it. And then it was shortly after that, George Soros decided to go have a private meeting with the G20. And then it was a month later that COVID-19 popped out of Wuhan. So, and I'll just hit on that.
Coincidence, though, Eric. Come on, take
Well, I
off
talked
your
with
tinfoil hat,
Yeah,
right?
So I talked with a friend of mine that is a infectious disease expert, actually worked for the State Department, wrote textbooks on infectious disease. And we talked, and he said it's a bunch of crap wearing a mask, Eric. He said, number one thing is, I can't use his name right now because I need to talk to him about it. Because it might pull his textbooks, So, but
Could happen.
yeah, we
are living in cancel culture.
Yeah, right. The number one thing he said was, the virus is too small. It's too small.
It's going to get through the cloth.
95, it'll pass through cloth, it'll pass through whatever it is. He said the only thing to keep it from transferring is to have like a biological hazard type, respirator type of mask, which that's ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
Then he also went on to say, he said, this is no different than the flu. And he said, what's happening is it's just attacking people that have a very weak immune system. So, and this is a gentleman that actually trained people within the State Department on infectious disease. So this is somebody that I know, that I trust, and it's just unbelievable. And just right back to it again, we're seeing like ridiculous type things where jockeys are on the back of horses with wearing a mask.
Yeah.
That don't make any sense. We're seeing where Scottsdale, the city of Scottsdale, for instance, is trying to lift the mask mandate, and Maricopa County keeps trying to enforce it.
I know. And I can't quite figure out what is to gain by that other than exerting control and flexing your muscles.
It just
control.
hurts the economy, makes people feel uncomfortable.
It does, but it's like so cities and counties rely on, the tax revenue and the travel revenue, tourism, all that kind of stuff. So
most of Maricopa County's elected officials are Democratic when you go and look at them.
I know, but they need money too. I don't get it. And so in the meantime, we are all living we're forced to live in cognitive dissonance constantly, where our brains are telling us what you just said. The masks don't work.
Wait a minute. Have you been listening to the news?
That's part of the problem.
The Democrat-controlled cities are saying that they're going to charge higher property tax on business owners for property to offset the losses from the taxes that they didn't generate with COVID. So what that tells you is that they don't care because they're going to get the money somehow anyway. So why does it matter?
They'll get the money or they'll get the property.
Right.
And that's where it really starts feeling like,
Yep. And
Portland
is doing
government are going to be the biggest landowner.
Yeah.
All these foreclosures.
Well, let me hit on that real quick. You're talking about large amounts of property.
Mm-hmm.
Guess who's been buying up tons of property lately?
Are you going to say Soros?
No.
Which one this time?
Amazon.
Oh yes, they're buying a lot of old shopping malls, and they're not even doing anything with them right now.
They're not buying old shopping malls. They're buying malls that have been forced to close through the pandemic. And
I see what you did there, pandemic.
And they're using them for distribution centers.
So what is the
which
what
I've
is their
read is actually they're not very efficient the way malls are built with the multiple floors.
So what are they doing? What's their goal?
We don't know yet. Land ownership, I guess, just buying up. It was.
I mean, Amazon. You think Amazon is anti mom and pop businesses? They don't want you to go shopping. They want you to do it through mail, and then they're buying these big malls that aren't good for. It'd be cheaper to build a distributing
single
building.
level distributorship.
Right. So what is, unless they're going to starve it and then bring it back?
Maybe.
The land alone that those properties set on is probably worth a ton because of locations.
Yeah.
So.
But it makes me sick that Portland has already said it, and other cities too are saying, we'll just raise the property taxes for commercial property.
And knowing, how do they not know that these people aren't going to be able to pay more tax because they're not able to be open?
They can't rent their buildings. Yeah. Right. And so then what does that do?
Or they're burnt out because protests.
In California, you know what they're doing in California because of the power issues? They're making the small businesses shut down during certain parts of the day, like a restaurant, okay? Because they have to shut down, okay? PG&E is putting protocol in place so that to save power, they shut down their business during certain hours, and then after that peak hour, they're allowed to open back up again and start their business up again.
And it's during peak hour that is when the restaurants are the busiest. So if they're not out to destroy the businesses, then what are they doing? Because with all this mask requirement, I mean, most restaurants can't survive on 50% as it is, and they're telling them they can only run 50% capacity, and then now they're telling them they got to close during their peak hours. It's to we'll take care of you. We'll give you your money. We'll make sure that your employees get paid, but you don't open. You don't open. We'll control you.
The Democratic states are crushing the small businesses right now. They're absolutely crushing them.
And they're still voting. I mean, I saw an ad a couple of days ago that a lady was a small business owner and says that we cannot survive without Biden in control. And I'm going, please let me talk to this lady. Please let me talk to you, lady.
What is it about him who's already been in politics for
40,
almost my
yeah.
entire lifetime? But this time, he's really going to fix it. No, he's not.
But yet
I'm
we've
sorry.
seen changes
God
with
love him,
Trump.
but
We've seen changes with Trump in the last 4 years or 6 years that have boosted everything.
yeah.
Is it a perfect world? No. But why would we go backwards to somebody who has no track record?
Right. Somebody that wants to raise
you-
Or has a
taxes
track record.
even
I'm sorry, he
more.
has a track record. It's just not a
Did
good
you-
one.
There.
Did you guys know that Amazon bought the Landmark Mall?
We being in way out here, we don't even know what that is, but I saw the headline.
What is
So
Landmark?
what is the Landmark Mall?
Well, it's just one of the largest malls. I forget where it's located.
Is it like the Mall of America? Is it like that one?
No, it's
If
not.
I was a cool kid, I would know this.
Well,
It's
a
not
landmark.
that big, but it's a very large mall.
It's a landmark.
Is it Arizona? What state is it in?
No, it's not Arizona. I think it was Virginia. I was trying to remember.
But I did remember the headline, and I remember thinking, what does that mean to
So-
me? I'm not really a mall shopper, so I'm
So
one
you-
of the ones that does use Amazon, and then I'm going to be mad when all the little businesses close, like our own, because we're small business
The
owners.
thing is that the malls were dying before COVID because of
Right.
because of Amazon.
Yeah, well, they're dying extra fast now.
Now
'cause
they're just easy to be bought up because they're all going bankrupt. So Amazon's coming in and I'm not sure for what purpose they want distribution centers this large, especially unless they're just gutting it and then redoing it.
Or what if they were going to change their description of a distributing place as a retail store that you can walk in and buy your product from? You could order it and walk in and pick it up. So you can
I
get
don't
it the
know.
same day. Who
They're
knows?
making huge,
That way
if you
would-
look at their commercials, they're making huge investments in electrical vans right now.
Mm-hmm.
Seems to be
Well,
a
there's
big
a huge
moment.
new processing center out here by us in Goodyear, Arizona. But we
Mhm.
do need to start wrapping up. We've got a couple other things we really want to
Okay.
get to. But one of the biggest things I want people to come away with is just to really question authority, right? And look at this congressional bill, the HR 204. It is called the American Sovereignty Restoration Act of 2019. And it is for the current Congress, the 116th Congress. And it was sponsored by Mike D. Rogers, who is a Republican out of Alabama, co-sponsored by Representative Thomas Massey, a Republican out of Kentucky. Also, Representative Andy Biggs, a Republican out of Arizona, and Representative Matt Gaetz, a Republican out of Florida. And these congressmen are trying to bring sovereignty back to America. And as Eric, you said, to minimize and push out the influence and the power that the UN would have over our laws and our regulations and our citizens. But let's watch that. Let's encourage other representatives to support this. I didn't look to see where it is right now in its process, but I would highly encourage we get that passed.
Well, Trump is not a pro United Nations guy, is he?
No, not at all.
No.
Right?
No.
Which is another reason so many people hate, quote
I
unquote.
mean, let's
him.
just look at what other European countries have done when they started the Euro thing, and how it takes great companies and great countries, brings them down to the level of the not so great countries, when they said that it was going to make the little countries become just as great as like England. And then what's England doing? They've been trying to get out of that thing they've even voted to get out of it, and it's still not happened yet, I don't think.
No, it hasn't.
So America is great. Let's keep it great, and let's be greater than other countries.
And
I wanted to touch on one more thing. You were kind of bringing it up just a little bit ago, and that was about Scottsdale and how the United Nations, if you look at the coalition of Greater Scottsdale, they have a very similar symbol that the United Nations uses for coordination mechanisms.
Mm-hmm.
And actually was trying to find some information on them, as far as like where the money comes from to them. There was an article written a few years back ago, and it basically said that they were receiving dark money, but past that point, it was hard to get other information.
There's probably a lengthy investigation going on.
Yeah, right.
You don't want to answer any questions. You just say there's a lengthy investigation going on.
Yeah. So I just encourage people to do their own research on that. I think when you look at candidates that you're thinking about, whether Republican or Democrat, you need to take a hard look at who they're connected to, what they're connected to, and what their real belief is. And in this period, we need to look at candidates that love God, love the Constitution, and they love, the United States of America as we know it, for what the UN and the political leftists want to turn it into. That would be my advice.
Absolutely. And
so-
just real quick before we run away, you at least off air, you've been kind of chatting about maybe making a run for office to serve
Yep.
your community, serve your state, serve your nation. Maybe what are you thinking about?
I have decided that I'm going to make a run for congressman in the 6th district. So it'd be U.S. Congress.
U.S. Congress.
The next election, of course.
Sure.
And
Who's your main competition in that area?
well, this year, we have on the Republican side, we have Swikert, and then we also have on the Democratic side, Tepernini. A lot of money is coming from, it filters through Act Blue, okay, for the Democrats, which was, Act Blue was actually set up by George Soros, and then he just has some other people run it. But the money filters through it.
And the reason that we might recognize Act Blue is because it's been in the news lately as sort of the when you say, hey, support BLM and donate money to BLM, where does it go? Act Blue. Yep. Right?
Which is the Democratic Party.
And who did you say had created Act Blue? Was George Soros. And where's that money going? Dumping right smack into the DNC, the Democratic National.
Right. So
Party.
Literally George Soros, in an indirect way, is buying the Democratic Party. Literally, he's buying them with money from all over the place. And I'm sure his own money too.
Absolutely. And
So
so
it's just,
here
it's
in our own state, it's not like it's in some far away place.
Yeah.
And we broadcast, of course, to the entire world, but definitely across the nation. And so if you're sitting there thinking, well, I don't know if this Act Blue thing, if this Soros thing, if this Black Lives Matter fundraising machine that supports only the Democratic Party, I don't know if it really impacts me. The answer is yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
It is nationwide. So,
it's at a local level.
Yeah. Do you have to care? No, but maybe just be aware, right? And once you're aware, you might decide that you care.
Yeah. And also, on that note, I would encourage people to back Jerry Sheridan for sheriff.
We've had him on the show.
He's a constitutionalist. He's a Christian, and he cares about this country, cares about the state, cares about the county. He's just real.
Yeah,
and
for sure.
I will let there will be something coming out about who he's running against later on that is tied into some of these people we just spoke about.
Very good. Very good. But yes, I think that Jerry Sheridan, in this election coming up, the 2020 election, his opponent is somebody that, is very much not upholding or taking seriously his constitutional oath. He is anti-gun, very much not gun-friendly, Paul Penzone. And so if I've got a choice between a constitutionalist, Jerry Sheridan, and that other guy, it's not a huge guess which way I'm going to go with my vote.
Even if they were on the other side, if we had a Democrat that was a true if there's such a thing, then we would.
There is, babe.
I'm sure there is. It's just but we would vote for a Democrat if they were true constitutionalists, if the Republican was not.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and people think that a sheriff isn't a big deal. Well, yes, it is, especially when you have a rogue elected officials that are trying to stomp all over your constitutional rights right now with, these ridiculous mask mandates and stuff. Dr. Fauci seems like he's running the country at the moment. And
well, the sheriff has chief
politician than a doctor anyway.
Right.
So, but that will all come out later, I'm sure.
Right.
But
there will be a lengthy investigation.
Oh yeah, I'm sure. And but as far as the current sheriff that we have, Penzone, there's deputies that are walking away from their retirement because he's not backing them, he's not supporting them, and it's sad. That's just one instance. And then there's the the criminal investigation unit for animal crimes. There's only been one crime since under investigation since Penzone has taken office.
Yeah.
You don't even hear his name.
All went away.
He's never in the news. He's never anywhere. Not saying that Joe was a little too heavy on that, but if people realize that the sheriff department is the chief law enforcement, in other words, they can control any local police department out there.
That's right.
They are the boss.
So when your constitutional rights are stepped on, possibly in the future, okay, because of all this nonsense going on, let's say you live in Glendale or Peoria or Chandler or whatever police department it is that is overseeing where you live or where your business is. Well, if it's unconstitutional and you get somebody like Jerry Sheridan in there that's a constitutionalist, he's going to make sure that your rights are not infringed on.
That's right. That's right. Because
look what's happening right now. Penzone isn't doing that.
It's
and
just
he's not going to do that. He's not going to stick up for the person's constitutional rights.
Right. It's just like, we Christians,
we
say
support him. That will come out later.
We say WWJD, what would Jesus do? We Christians say that. Constitutionalists say, I don't know what the acronym is, but it's, what does the Constitution say? Figure that out. That's a
the Constitution protects us.
Yeah, for sure.
The Constitution, the easiest way to understand the Constitution, it was put together by our founding fathers to recognize that God He gives us our inalienable rights. They're given from God. It was recognition of that. So that's why the United States has the most freedom in all the world, because we recognize that. Our founders recognize that. So the Constitution is so important to protect. But at the same time, when you get the wrong elected officials in there, it's a frail document as well. So I hope people take the election seriously this year and vote for somebody that loves God, loves the Constitution, aligns with their Christian beliefs, because the war has come to us. And so now it's time for us to defend ourselves. We didn't go looking for it. It came to us. So we better start being a little bit more serious and start acting like patriots a little bit more and sticking up for one another when we see somebody being arrested or tased at a football game for wearing a mask or not wearing a mask.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, are you serious? Really? And she was sitting with her family outside. And I mean,
That's a power thing. That's all that is, a power thing. For those
it's a power
people,
thing.
as a constitutionalist, I would say those people that don't want to follow the Constitution, we give you permission to leave the country. Okay, right? Right?
Yeah.
Well, and I think what happens in those instances, because even as I was watching that video, I don't even know how to refer people to it, but it was just a young lady sitting on some metal bleachers,
Away from everybody else.
away from everybody else, not wearing a mask, and a large police officer in a blue shirt came up and was just manhandling her to get her in handcuffs. And I don't, even the people sitting there, they might think, oh, she could be a criminal. How do they know that the only crime is the mask thing? And as I'm watching the video, I'm like, I don't know how invested to get in this because I don't know the backstory.
They could hear the whole conversation start in the beginning.
Right. But I think that what happens is that people, they feel frozen because they feel like they don't have enough information necessarily. And then this person, and then he brings in another law enforcement person, and they're like touching her and breathing on her, and whether they've got masks on or not. I'm like, you are creating so much more germ transfer than if you would have just let her sit here in the outdoors on this bench watching the game. What is the matter with people?
And the scary thing is that even if it's just for the mask and you knew it was just for the mask, if you interfere with that, then you could get a felony charge against you because that's how they work. So are you going to risk a felony to stop somebody from wearing a mask?
And what about the preachers and the Christians that were singing outside the church? Is it Moscow, Idaho, Iowa? Sorry, I can't remember which state, but I mean, they obviously, we knew why they were being arrested there. So, to ask yourself, oh, we don't know what else about that person. I would say,
if you do know, perhaps you should try to speak up.
I mean, what are they going to do? Arrest everybody that was there? There was hundreds there. So really?
Yeah. No, I definitely hear you. And we definitely cannot support our constitutional rights if we don't know them. Right?
That's right.
Please read this document. Look how that'll take you an hour. Read that.
Yeah.
Read it.
And I have a friend, I do have a friend in the FBI, and the ADA law that there's been so much, people are like, oh, that don't work or whatever. No, it works just fine. So if you have a medical exemption, that you can't wear a mask, that's through the Department of Justice, and you can call the phone number. You don't have to sue. It's actually a fine. It's like $89,000 or whatever right off the bat, $189,000 second time occurrence. That goes against a corporation or a business or anybody once you filed that complaint with the Department of Justice. So I encourage people that do have medical exemptions to do that. Absolutely.
Which asthma would be one of those.
What's that?
Asthma would be one of those.
Yeah. Oh, asthma, being claustrophobic. I don't know. I mean, there's probably all kinds of stuff you can make up, just like they're making up all this stuff with COVID. COVID's real, don't get me wrong, but the misinformation and it's being blown way, way out of perspective. It is crazy.
Yes.
And
all right.
So, and then the Department of Homeland Security has been receiving all the Department of Health reports for about the last month and a half. President Trump requested that. And that's why you're seeing the death rates go down as they start going through that stuff, because when it goes back to the CDC, it just gets manipulated. So it goes to DHS, and then DHS can hold the CDC accountable that way, at least with the numbers and actually looking through the reports.
So there was a guy on Fox News. I didn't see it, but someone told me, and I believe them. They said that he said that not one person has ever died from COVID. What they've died from was complications that the COVID helped with. Now, go back 2 years. If somebody had a heart attack, if you had a heart attack, but you died because the exacerbation from the flu, they would say you died from a heart attack. Now they're saying you died from COVID from it, you know? And so if they took that rule, then probably Elvis died from COVID, Tupac died from COVID, all these things, because it's true. It is a dangerous disease.
Oh, yeah.
But it attacks the unhealthy people, usually the ones that are way overweight, breathing.
The very unhealthy people.
Like that. The others are, but so it's such a, I mean, I might be in that percentage, but I'm telling you that if it comes to my rights, you let me make that decision.
I agree.
Yep.
I agree. We got to
also,
go. Go ahead.
I wanted to say, can I say one thing? When we talked last time, we were talking about a cashless society. I want to bring up the fact that in Singapore, they have removed most of the ATM machines from the banks in Singapore. And I think that's important to know and understand. If you go to my PowerPoint slide, there's a picture from an ATM machine that shows on the bank message that due to moving to a cashless society, the ATM machines will be removed. And that was back on August 25th. And then also I wanted to read a scripture real quick, because I think it's good to leave off with that, with everything.
I do. And I do want to, without mentioning names, because we didn't get his permission, but our mutual friend who is American, Arizona guy, working in Singapore right now, he is the one that made us aware of the fact that when he got there a couple of months ago, they were normal. Singapore was totally normal. And in just a few months, they've gone cashless. They're taking out the ATMs. They're fining people for sitting too close to each other in restaurants or talking to each other. You know, I'm sitting at this table and I'm chatting with somebody at the next table. You can get fined for that.
And the cashless situation, they're completely cashless now?
And they're going completely cashless now. And it can happen that fast. And
Can
so
you
we
imagine?
thank our friend who you are for keeping us in that.
And the reason it happens so fast like that in Singapore is because they don't have the constitutional rights to protect them.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
It's very important.
Go ahead with your
Scripture time.
Okay. I'm going to read this scripture here. It spoke to me with what's going on right now. It says, this is Romans 16, verse 17. I urge you, brothers, to watch out for those who cause divisions and put obstacles in your way that are contrary to the teaching you have learned. Keep away from them, for such people are not serving our Lord Christ, but their own appetites. By smooth talk and flattery, they deceive the minds of naive people. Everyone has heard about your obedience, so I am full of joy over you, but I want you to be wise about what is good and innocent about what is evil.
Wow. Wow, that's so perfect for right now. Just creating seeds of dissension everywhere. And we just are wise. What is the other one? Be wise as serpents and harmless as doves. And that's what we try to be. But Eric, thank you so much for all this research that you've done. I'll just keep updating your PowerPoint. It'll live on your guest page at GunFreedomRadio.com under Eric Watson. People can take their time and peruse through it. There's just a ton of wonderful, informative information in there. So tell folks real quick.
I wanted to tell you about the spicy prepper.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of prepping, you guys have some at your hat shop, and tell folks how they can follow you and come shop.
So we hope that this is all temporary, of course. So, but Emily and I, my wife, we felt the need to want to help our community a little bit, prepare, just in case something does happen. And so we have some prep items. We call it the spicy prepper.
That's cute.
But it's everything from long-term food, ReadyWise long-term food, to water filtration that doesn't take up a lot of space. It's all off-grid type items there. And then also we have EMP shields to protect your vehicle, your home, things like that as well. And we also have Faraday bags. They're military grade, law enforcement Faraday bags, and also phone protectors, so you can't be tracked and traced if you'd like to go somewhere and be off the grid still. So
Very good. Fantastic. All right, sir. How do we find you digitally? What is your website?
go to watsonshatshop.com and just come to the shop. We have all this stuff right there at the shop. So
And get a custom hat made. I want to get
yep,
that done.
we're still
come see
making
you.
plenty of hats and fixing them too through the crazy. That's the nickname I'm giving it, crazy.
Yeah.
Well,
for
Eric,
sure.
thank you very much for being on the show today and for all your research. And we hope to have you back on soon.
Yeah, well, thank you guys. You guys have a blessed day, and we'll see you soon, I'm sure.
Thank you, Eric. God bless. Bye-bye.
God bless you. Bye.
Well,
A lot to digest.
there is so much. And, you look at something and say, that's just a coincidence. But you know what? There's a lot of coincidences happening soon. And the deal about Singapore becoming a cashless society, I mean, the Constitution has helped and protected us for a long time, but it's getting weaker and weaker and weaker because we don't know what it means. Enough of us don't know what it means to say, hey, no, you're not doing this. You're just not doing it. And we don't challenge people that are against the Constitution enough. But you take a Singapore that has no Constitution, in 2 weeks' time, they can go to a cashless society. And think about that. Oh God, it'd be so easy. I don't have to carry change. I don't have to have a change jar. I don't have to worry. Wait a minute. They know exactly whoever controls that. And maybe it will be a guy like Soros one day that controls everything that goes on in the United States. Because why? He's got his finger on the banks. And that man, or whoever that person would be, can just shut you off right now. We saw Bank of America, a lot of people had 0 accounts in their account for a while. That might have been a little test run just to see how they could do it and how quick.
So again, a lot of this sounds like, oh, you guys are just crazy. You're just,
Well, we are.
conspiracy theorists. You're just whatever. And it's like, okay, wait a minute. A lady is sitting watching an outdoor sport by herself without a mask. And somebody saw fit to call the police. The police saw fit to arrest her. And now she's got court issues and everything else. So let's say that the next thing, if we go cashless society, is, hey, that person doesn't wear a mask in public. Let's just shut off their bank account. I mean,
Yeah, we don't have
could
to
it
go chase.
happen?
I mean, law enforcement wanted to devise a thing in a car that they could take any car by their license plate and shut that car down.
Mm-hmm.
Well, you think about it, man, that'd be great for all these chases that they
Especially in LA, there's always a car chase in LA.
Right.
What is
but
up
the,
with that?
But the thing is that we're going to take the few that are bad and we're going to make everybody have to pay that $800 to put this conversion in their car.
Mm-hmm.
And then we have to worry because then they could shut you down anytime. Oh, you know what? Today is no gas day. You're off. Everybody because pollution's high today or whatever reasons.
Yeah.
So be aware of all these things. Think about the Safe Gun Act that they want to do where you have a gun that has to have your fingerprint to use. Well, they could probably control that too, where, okay, now we've got this, now we can just shut them down.
Yeah.
Beware, people, that it's not all, we're sacrificing everybody for a few.
Yeah.
Just like the background checks on guns and things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
So
All
anyway,
right.
Eric, we'd like to thank you for being on the show today. Awesome. I'd like to get more in depth with that down the road with you, and really, really want to thank our listeners. And please don't think we're crazy. Just throw some of those ideas and think. Some of them are coincidences, but some of them are for real. And so, thank you for listening.
Yeah, and it's okay if you disagree. That's awesome because then you're mentally engaged, and hopefully you'll go and do some actual research and not just look at 3 or 4 headlines that really all those headlines are doing is agreeing with each other and quoting each other,
Right.
but it's really just one source where it started, and see what you come up with.
Yeah,
you know?
I can't
Might
agree.
be surprised, might
I-
not be. I don't know.
It's hard for me to agree that Soros has that much power, even though he's a multi-trillion-dollar guy. I just don't know that he really has that as much power as we're thinking that he has.
I
And
don't
he's
know.
probably like, oh, I got these guys fooled. But who knows? And if you don't think that one person might want to control the whole world, Hitler, it can and has tried to happen before.
Yeah, no,
So.
that's for reals. And if we elect people that their first obligation is to the Constitution and the oath that they take, and that they truly see themselves as a public servant and a true representative of their constituency, then the Soroses of the world are still going to try to invoke influence over them through money and campaign donations and that sort of thing, but they're going to have less opportunity. So we still have a horse in the race.
Yeah. Our
And
constitutional butt can kick their unconstitutional butt any day of the week.
And this next election is your next opportunity. So be
Yep.
sure that you are registered to vote. I think this show actually airs after the registration date has passed. So I hope that you are already registered and doing your research and voting for constitutionally based issues and candidates. All right. Thank you to our awesome listeners. Your time is your most valuable commodity, and we value that you spend it with us. Please pray for our nation.
Yes.
Pray for our leaders,
Yes.
representatives, people who have been given
Most
positions of
them.
responsibility.
Most of them.
All of them, Dan.
Even the ones I don't like.
Especially the ones you don't like.
Even that one.
Even that one.
We didn't say Pelosi this whole thing today.
And now you did. Do you feel better?
No,
What are you going to
actually,
do when she's out of office?
actually, it
They're
puts a
trying to
little
vote
pain
her
right here,
out
Mike.
of her place of power. What are you going to do then? You're gonna have to
Probably
find-
send her a thank you for accepting her not being voted in.
All right, guys.
I don't know what I'd do.
Have a great week. Be good to each other. And God bless.
God bless.